So let's try this again. Hey everybody, this is your Digital Super Saiyan 3 back here with another video. And today I'm going to be doing a top 10 episode ideas list for the documentary series WWE Rivals. This is an episode list of ideas for future episodes of WWE Rivals on A&E. First we had the show being hosted by Freddie Prinze Jr., then later the show was taken over by Gabriel Iglesias for Season 4. So with Gabriel Iglesias basically hosting the next seasons of WWE Rivals, I figured let's talk about these following 10 rivalries that should get an episode or a future episode in WWE Rivals. Now, if you have a rivalry idea that should be on WWE Rivals, let me know in the comment section below. And it's just me, but I don't have any women's rivalries on this list, so you're not going to see any women's rivalries on this list. Mainly because I couldn't think of any female rivalries. So anyway, on to the list itself. This is my top 10 WWE Rivals episode ideas for the episodes featuring WWE rivalries in A&E's WWE Rivals documentary series. Number 10, John Cena vs. CM Punk. Honestly, let's talk about the odyssey that was John Cena vs. CM Punk in the early 2010s. Cena and Punk were definitely the glue that held WWE together during the early 2010s when everything was so family-friendly. And how the WWE had become, pretty stale, like a chip, like stale potato chips. But CM Punk and John Cena made it worth watching during that time period, during those early 2010s. We got the infamous pipe bomb segment in 2011, where we were starting the whole, gimmick that CM Punk would start going by as the self-proclaimed best in the world. And, we would also get John Cena at his absolute best as a babyface during this time period, because I know every hero needs a villain to battle, and for John Cena, CM Punk became that type of villain that was sorely needed during that time period. Especially when you have to add Paul Heyman into the mix, you know you're going to get something good. Number 9, Randy Savage vs. Ric Flair. Now, they've done a couple of episodes that featured Randy Savage on WWE Rivals. They did, in Season 3, they did Randy Savage vs. Jake Roberts. And in the beginning of Season 4, they had Randy Savage vs. Hulk Hogan. So, the next logical solution to go with for Randy Savage is his rivalry with the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Whether it be starting about their rivalry leading into WrestleMania 8, with Savage claiming that Elizabeth was mine before she was ever yours, where Flair is trying to steal Savage's girl. And then not just talking about their WWE stuff, but also having to throw in their WCW rivalries as well, because that also takes up a big chunk of the rivalry, because the rest of Flair and Savage's matches all took place in WCW, where their first two bouts took place in WWF, or the WWE. Yeah, I know I'm going to keep saying WWE a lot, since it is called WWE Rivals. And you know what? I am just going to keep saying WWE instead of just saying WWE/WWF, because, it just makes it easier. Number 8, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Undertaker. So you got the most popular guy in the Attitude Era, one of the most popular stars in WWE history in Stone Cold Steve Austin. And he's taking on a guy who had been the cornerstone of WWE for years in The Undertaker. Stone Cold and The Undertaker have definitely had some memorable and incredible matches throughout their rivalry from the late 90s and early 2000s. Austin and Taker have definitely had some memorable moments throughout the years of their careers. And definitely two guys who had quite the history. And it'd be perfect for them to cover the history of Austin and Taker on an episode of WWE Rivals. Whether it be their many matches for the WWE Championship, like a brutal First Blood match, their Buried Alive, or their late 98 Buried Alive match at Rock Bottom, their SummerSlam bout on the biggest party of the summer in the main event of SummerSlam in Madison Square Garden. Austin and Taker have definitely had a series of incredible and physical battles that were Pier 6 barroom brawls. And Austin and Taker definitely deserve an episode on WWE Rivals, because that's definitely the most logical solution you could do when you're talking about the rivalries that feature Stone Cold Steve Austin. The next logical choice would have to be The Undertaker, because you already talked about Bret, you already talked about Shawn, you already talked about Rock, and hell, you even talked about Booker T, so let's include his rivalry with The Undertaker next. Number 6, the Usos versus the New Day. So, now we get into our first tag team rivalry on the list, and definitely one of the most incredible tag team rivalries we got during the late 2010s. And definitely the best part of 2017 was the Usos and the New Day. I mean, when the Usos came in, yes, they wore matching tights and they did the colorful face paint. But then, in 2016, late 2016, they turned heel. They started wearing street clothes. They no longer did the tribal dances. The tribal dance they did for their, original entrance. But then, of course, you got the New Day, who also went through such a big change. They started as a very gospel group when they debuted. And then when they turned heel, because nobody wanted to accept them as baby faces, the New Day then later went on to become more sillier, but could still kick your butt. They started believing in the power of positivity, but also they added some more goofiness to their gimmick as well. Being that the New Day was a trio, and they took on the duo of twin brothers that is the Usos. And all throughout 2017, they had memorable match after memorable match after memorable match that were so many great classics. And New Day and Usos tore the house down whenever they got together. So it'd be perfect for an episode of WWE Rivals to talk about the tag team rivalry between the Usos and the New Day next for Season 5. If we ever get the 5th season, or when the 5th season comes, yeah. Now we go on to number 5, and trust me, this guy's like the last guy I'm talking about when it comes to the guys that represent the Anoa'i Wrestling Dynasty, and that is the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns. So, who's Roman Reigns going to be going up against this time, or what Roman Reigns rivalry is WWE Rivals going to be talking about for this episode idea? Why, his rivalry with that of KO, Kevin Owens. If you already talked about his rivalry with Brock Lesnar, you might as well talk about his rivalry with his on-again, off-again rivalry with Kevin Owens, because they definitely got into... It was quite a blood feud between Owens and Roman Reigns during the late 2010s, early 2020s. And the odyssey that Roman Reigns and And Kevin Owens definitely was one for the ages, whether it be battling in cage matches, TLC matches, last man standing matches, and even including their match at 2017 Royal Rumble that featured Chris Jericho in a shark cage. So, yeah, Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens definitely deserve to have an episode of Rivals be talked about them. Number 4, and this one I just put on the list because I really want to see another episode dedicated to this guy, and that is Rey Mysterio versus Randy Orton. Yeah, I know, it's an oddball choice. Why Randy Orton? Why couldn't it have been Rey Mysterio's rivalries with the likes of guys like Batista? Or maybe his rivalry with Kane? Or even talked about Juventud Guerrera, or Dean Malenko, or Chris Jericho. Well, basically, I was kind of stumped to think about what. Well, mainly because I had this rivalry on the brain. And I actually wanted a certain YouTuber to actually do a review of Randy Orton and Rey Mysterio's rivalry. It's also kind of a really oddball choice since, of course, Randy himself has been in a few episodes, but I have yet to see one based off of, Rey Mysterio's rivalry with Randy Orton. And also because the last time Rey Mysterio actually had an episode on Rivals was his Season 1 rivalry with Eddie Guerrero that they talked about in Season 1 of Rivals. So, if the next logical solution they can come up with is Randy Orton, then I'm okay with that. Plus, there was also CM Punk they could also do, but I only gave Punk only one spot on the list. But now we're getting into the top 3, and these are the 3 that I really, really, really want WWE Rivals to cover the most. And at the number 3 spot is Shawn Michaels versus Triple H. Now, I know both Triple H and Shawn Michaels have already had enough episodes for their separate rivalries. I mean, hell, the very first episode of Rivals featured Shawn's rivalry with Bret Hart. They also talked about Shawn's rivalry with the likes of The Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and then for Triple H, they talked about his rivalries with the likes of The Rock, Mick Foley, and of course Seth Rollins, oddly enough. And of course Triple H also had an episode with Batista, with his rivalry with Batista. So if we're going to go for the next possible solution they can come up with for Triple H is Shawn Michaels. Same can be said for Shawn. Triple H and Shawn Michaels was one of my favorite rivalries during the early 2010, or the early 2000s, I meant to say. The early 2000s, from 2002 to 2004. Why did I say early 2010s? I meant to say early 2000s. This feud from 2002 to 2004 was quite a storybook rivalry. Betrayal, greed, and everything else you wanted, Triple H and Shawn Michaels gave you. And they gave you plenty of violence in their feud. But now we're getting into something much tamer with the next 2. Number 2, the Hart Foundation versus the British Bulldogs. So, yeah, I'm actually anxious to talk about another tag team rivalry. This time, we get to one from the mid-1980s, from 1985 to 1987, between the Hart Foundation and the British Bulldogs. As the British Bulldogs and the Hart Foundation really did bring the best out of each other. Both teams had that similar setup to it. You know, for the Hart Foundation, they had Bret Hart as the technical guy and Jim the Anvil Neidhart as the power as the Power Man, where for the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith was the Power Man, and the Dynamite Kid was the quicker, smaller technician guy. But of course, the rivalry also included a rivalry within a rivalry between their managers. The British Bulldogs had their beloved mascot slash manager in Matilda, and of course the Hart Foundation having the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. Considering we've seen Jimmy Hart appear on WWE Rivals plenty of times, it would make sense that Jimmy Hart would appear on this particular episode, because Jimmy Hart managed the Hart Foundation, back when the Hart Foundation were naughty, naughty boys. And then later, the Hart Foundation turned face, and split from Jimmy Hart. Long after their rivalry with the British Bulldogs had ended. And it'd be a perfect episode to talk about for WWE Rivals, because I'm antsy to actually get a Hart Foundation versus British Bulldogs episode. Since we already talked about the Dudleys, Hardys, and Edge and Christian, please give us the Hart Foundation versus British Bulldogs next. And at my number one spot is Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair. Now, I know Ric Flair already had one episode dedicated to him, which was in Season 3 with his rivalry with Dusty Rhodes. I figured the next logical solution, his rivalry with Hulk Hogan. And Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan definitely have had a memorable rivalry throughout the 1990s and into the 2000s. Hogan and Flair were two of their company's biggest guys. Hogan was the top guy in the WWE for a number of years, and Ric Flair in WCW. And then once Hogan got to WCW, that was when the feud / rivalry officially began. I mean, yeah, they did, prior to that, have a match in Madison Square Garden in 91, but that ended in a DQ finish, and nobody wants a DQ finish. But then we had to wait till 1994 for Hogan and Flair to officially get it on, which was originally supposed to happen at WrestleMania 8, but then Flair was given a feud with Savage, and Hogan ended up feuding with Sid. So, Hogan, Flair, it'll probably be one of those rivalries I really want to see WWE Rivals actually talk about. Because with Hogan, they've already done 4 episodes with Hogan. They did Andre, they did Piper, they did Rock, and of course they did Savage. So the next logical solution to go with for Hogan is his rivalry with that of Ric Flair. Anyway, yeah, this is definitely the list of rivalries I really want to see be talked about on WWE Rivals on A&E. I really want this show to continue, and I really want to see just how the panel's going to talk about each rivalry, because I love how they bring up each of their rivalries respectively. Anyway, till then, this has been your Digital Super Saiyan 3, and I will see you guys next time. See ya!